What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Wildcat Dash here on Dash Sports TV. My name is Jacob Mennuti. We're joined again with my co-host Ryan Wall. Ryan, how are we doing on this Friday afternoon?
I'm doing great. I can't believe that Pac-12 football is less than a month away.
Yeah, it honestly scares the heck out of me. Well, we got a lot to talk about, so let's not waste any time. It continues to be an eventful offseason for the Arizona Wildcats. Fall camp, as you just mentioned, fall camp begins this weekend. Or actually, I think today, with the season being just 4 weeks away. You know, there's been the first couple days of camp. They might be without their head honcho for the first couple days of camp. Kevin Sumlin testing positive for COVID-19 on Monday. The good news is, however, is that someone was asymptomatic. So his son was also asymptomatic. So it sounds like Kevin Sumlin should be back here in the next week or so. But I mean, perhaps even earlier. I remember someone said on Wednesday at the Pac-12 Media Day that he was doing well and he was aiming to get back sometime this weekend. He was talking to with Stephen Paul from Cats Medical Services about getting that to happen. So another really good thing about that is that it didn't sound like from the tracing that it was within the team how he got the virus. So it doesn't sound like there will be any sort of outbreak within the team. So, but kind of unfortunate timing here for the Wildcats to lose your guy a few days before camp starts. I don't know. It just feels like it's another problem that Arizona has to deal with. So, what are your take on this, Ryan? What do you think is the biggest hurdle that Arizona is going to have to face this way? Because right now it looks like there's a laundry list of things that they're going to have to deal with.
I mean, it's just a big hit off the start because like they had like at the beginning of the off season, like they thought they were playing like normally at the end of the summer, and then got pushed back, and it's just another big hit for this already weak and struggling Arizona football team. Losing your head coach like right before they're starting, it's a disadvantage right off the bat because like this is Grant Gunnell's like time to shine, and they're trying to like implement him into the offense right away, and just not to have your coach there to do it with, it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest concern is the defense. I mean, we've been talking about it, about how many transfers we've lost, and that side of the ball is pretty weak. And I feel like we've talked about that every week about how the defense is gonna be like such a problem. So I don't really want to beat a dead horse here, but I mean, like we're just 4 weeks away from the start of the season, and Arizona has a ton of things they have to figure out on defense. Like, I mean, they've got a new defensive coordinator coming in, so Paul Rhodes is gonna want to install his new defensive scheme. I also don't think that they know what kind of defensive scheme they even want to run yet, right? Like, because I think they initially wanted to run a 3-4, but that decision was made before we lost Colin Schooler and Tony Fields. So I mean, obviously there isn't enough linebackers on the roster anymore to make that happen and run that 3-4 scheme. So I mean, I don't know, just in a 4 week period, you're gonna have to figure all that out. And at this point, it probably sounds like it'll be more of a nickel defense with the least amount of the linebackers that they have. They'll probably have to run more corners instead. But that's the other thing too. They don't know what their depth chart is going to look like as well. Like, so you have to figure out what kind of scheme you want to run. You got to figure out who's playing where and what your depth chart's going to look like, all in the span of 4 weeks. So like, I don't know. Like, I even asked Kevin Sumlin at media day if he had an idea of what he wanted to do at the linebacker position, and he basically said no because we haven't had camp yet until just today. So it's just like having to figure all that out is just such a pain, and it's going to be a real mess trying to figure that all out in 4 weeks.
Yeah, it's very challenging, as you said, trying to like implement, like try to make a new make adjustments on the defensive like side of the football, like, and with all these young players, it's very tough, and it's not all. It's really just a lack of talent here, like that they're going to be dealing with. Like, I mean, I do think on the bright side that their offense could pick them up because I think they could be one of the sleeper offenses in the Pac-12 this year.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, I think Arizona finished like top 5 in every offensive category. I mean, I know how much of a headache they were to watch, and it felt like there were 3-and-outs left and right. But like in passing, rushing, they finished top 5 in all of those categories. So it's really just going to come down to the defense. And I don't really know if it was one of those situations where he said he didn't know what he was doing with the linebackers. Maybe just because he wanted to keep his cards close, and you don't really want to tell other teams what you're doing. But I don't know. It really does feel like like we don't know what they're doing with the linebacking core. I mean, I wouldn't know what to do with this linebacker core. I mean, I was looking through the roster. There's walk-ons everywhere. Like I didn't recognize like 20% of the roster just because it's all those walk-ons. So I don't know. It's definitely a little bit concerning to have to figure everything out in that 4-week span. And we were talking about how 6 weeks wasn't enough time, but camp is just starting today. So now you got only 4 weeks. So what they were doing in that 2 weeks is beyond me. Like it seems like every team in the Pac-12 was doing nothing up until just now. So we were talking about how 6 weeks was not a lot, but 4 weeks is even worse.
Yeah, and it's very strange because like trying to run like or lead the team as best as he can over Zoom. Like I mean, if he's out for an extended period of time, and like up until if he only has like a week or two, maybe like before the season, like it's just gonna hurt this team like very much. And like they're already don't have a lot of guys there. So I mean, it's gonna be if the offensive defensive coordinators could step up and take charge and lead this team because like they don't have a lot of veterans so someone has to step up here and take the lead.
Yeah, I think from what it sounded like is that someone was going to be with the team virtually, at least until he gets back. It sounds like he'll be back sometime next week. At least that would be probably the most ideal thing. But even if someone wasn't going to be there for the first couple days of camp, I think Paul Rhodes has that head coaching experience when he was at Iowa. So, I mean, if things were to kind of be a mess during practice, I think he would be the guy to kind of lead that. But yeah, it's just not having your head coach for the first couple days of practice is just one more thing you have to deal with. And I don't know, just this team is already kind of full of question marks, and that's just one more thing. So I don't know, it's going to be tough for sure.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. And after them releasing the schedule last Saturday, they didn't give us any breaks there either.
Yeah, well, why don't we talk about the schedule actually, because that'll bring us to our next topic. This team has had a ton of things to sort out before the season. So, I mean, with Arizona, it's going to hit them. That start of the season is going to hit them like a truck, right? I mean, because that start of the season is just brutal, right? Like, I think you start off right out of the gate, you're playing Utah on the road. And then, that following week, you come home to play USC. And then, you hit the road again to go play Washington before you're coming down to UCLA. So just the 3 of the first 4 weeks are all on the road. So, I mean, what do you kind of make of this? I mean, compared to kind of the other teams in the Pac-12, how do you think Arizona did you think they got an easier or worse schedule? Because those first 4 weeks, I mean, you're playing 3 teams that are obviously like arguably the 3 better teams in the conference, right? Like USC is probably projected to win the South, maybe even projected to win the whole thing in the Pac-12. So I don't know. It just seems like the schedule is brutal. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't give us any breaks. They didn't give the Wildcats anything like with this schedule. Like it's an extremely difficult schedule. I mean, just looking at it, I like even like UCLA for a team who's like not projected to be that good, but like that game's on the road too, and like we don't play well on the road, so like that's not a gimme either. So like I realistically I see one win on this schedule, and that's Colorado. I mean, they're projected to be, by all accounts that I've seen, like the worst team in the Pac-12. So, that's the only win that stands out to me. I mean, they're going to struggle at all these games. Like having started off with the 3 tough opponents, and then coming home for Colorado, and then finishing off with ASU. Like ASU, like that's. I know it's a rivalry game, but like I don't see any way we keep that close with how they're projected this upcoming season.
Okay, now I see this team capable of at least 2 wins. Like I said, maybe 3, just because ASU is always a toss-up game, regardless of how well good or each team is playing. Since it's a rivalry game, I feel like everyone always shows out. So I think that's always a toss-up game. But I mean, you're a little less optimistic than I am, and some people might even say that you're a lot more realistic than I am, and I'm the crazy one. And honestly, I think I am.
Yeah, who do you realistically see? Like I just don't see them beating UCLA, Colorado, and ASU. Like first of all, they're back to back to back games, and like they're not going to beat all three of them, and the other three, like, they're not winning. I would be shocked if they beat Utah, USC, or Washington, any of those three.
Okay, so I think UCLA is a winnable game. So give me your take on UCLA. Why do you think that game is going to be a struggle? Because I'll let you go first, and then I'll make my statement. But I think UCLA is a pretty winnable game.
Yeah, I think that's a winnable game. I mean, I like DTR. I mean, I want to see what he can prove. I mean, he's a good young player, and just being on the road, like, I just don't. I don't like our chances there. I mean, I think Coach Chip Kelly could have a bounce back season fighting for his job. Hasn't had much success in the past few years, so I'm not saying we lose that game, but I'm not saying it's a gimme. Like, because I think they're going to win that game or the Colorado. I think they're going to win one of those two.
I think there's a chance they win both. I mean, Chip Kelly is arguably in the same position that Kevin Sumlin is in right now, where there's a ton of pressure on him to win with a below-average roster. So, like, UCLA, they have to replace a few different players on both sides of the ball, right? They lost Joshua Kelly. They lost the number one corner last season. So, I mean, they've got a ton of holes on that team as well. And that team wasn't good last year, really. So, like, it was already kind of mediocre, and now you lost a couple guys, and it could be even worse. And Arizona beat them last year. That was Ganell's first start where he lit up that defense. So you look at that defense and where it was last year and what it might be this year. I don't think it got any better. I think it got worse from this year to last year. So I think that's a pretty winnable game in itself. And obviously Colorado, I can't see that. Arizona has no business losing that game. I mean, they're just a wreck over there. They lost Laviska Shenault. They lost Tony Brown. Their quarterback situation is all up in the air right now. I mean, not to mention they have a completely new head coach. So, I mean, as questionable as Arizona may be, I still find it impossible to lose that game against Colorado. And I think UCLA is a winnable game as well.
Yeah, I mean, those two games are the best games, the best chance. I mean, that Arizona has this year. I mean, like, out of the first three games, like, Washington, like, they played them close last year. So, like, that one out of the first three, I would predict to be a little closer. But I think it'll be tough. I mean, also depending on who we get in the seventh game.
Right. Yeah, I was actually just going to bring that up. I think an interesting piece to this is that we don't know what that seventh game is going to be like. So if Arizona ends up only winning, one or two games, I mean, there's a chance that they end up playing, the other terrible team in the North, right? So, like, against, Washington State or Oregon State. I mean, how do you like Arizona's chances against, Washington State and Oregon State or any other team that you see is pretty terrible in the North? I mean, do you think that there's a chance that Arizona wins that seventh game?
Yeah. I do. I mean, because if they don't do too well, I mean, they're probably going to get, during the first six, they're probably going to get paired with one of those lesser teams. So, yeah, I think Oregon State, Washington State, they can have a win there. So, yeah, since that hasn't been announced, I was saying one, but, like, I think they could win that game too. So two, maybe three at the highest, but I don't see that happening.
I mean, I think both Washington State and Oregon State are pretty winnable as well. I mean, Washington State more so than Oregon State. I mean, Washington State's quarterback situation is, another terrible situation right now. I don't think they even have a guy on the roster that has taken any college snaps yet. So, I mean, I'm banking on that to, be the decider. But I think Max Borgi, however, is pretty legit. So I think Washington State will go as far as they take him. But I think that's a pretty winnable game in itself. Their defense is not very good. Oregon State isn't terrible. I don't think they're awful, but I actually think they'll be a lot better this year. But I don't know. I still see the Pac-12, or I still see Oregon State far off from the other Pac-12 schools. So I kind of see Oregon State in that same, level of play than Arizona. So I think that's a pretty winnable game as well. So I don't know. As much as you want to trash on Arizona, we have to remember that there's a couple of terrible teams in the Pac-12 as well. So, like, I think Arizona has some chances against some of those other teams.
Yeah. As I said, I love Arizona's offense. I think they're going to score a lot of points, and that's what's going to keep them in the games. I mean, their defense, not so much, as we discussed. But the real question that I've been just thinking to myself is, like, if this team does, like, win so if they win, like, 1 to 2 games, like, out of 7, I'm just saying, like, how does Kevin Sumlin come back? Like, that's what I'm wondering. Because, like, how many years can you let this go on, just, like, just being mediocre and below? Like that's what I'm really wondering.
I don't know. I mean, for me, it's kind of hard to fire someone after everything that this pandemic has put people through this year. With a 7-game season, it's so hard to coach, right? Because there's no room for error. But I mean, I don't really know. I don't think you can really fire him after this season. You have to buy out his contract, which I don't think Arizona can do right now. So I mean, especially with the recruiting class he's got in 2021, maybe it's one of those situations where you just let him ride it out. But going back to the schedule, the thing that kind of concerns me the most is just the beginning of the schedule, because the beginning of the season sets the tone for the rest of the way, right? Like those 4 games are brutal for Arizona. So there's a chance that they can go 1-3 or maybe 0-4. Like how do you like find the motivation to like finish off the season if you're 0-4 or 1-3? Like those 4 games are going to set the tone for the entire year. So like that's what I'm most concerned about. It's just like you're going to be looking, you finish your 4th game. It's like, oh my God, at best, you're 1-3. Like I don't know what to do from here. Like there's not a lot of hope. So like, how do you have that motivation to finish out the season? It's going to be tough. Like I wish the back half of Arizona's schedule was more was more harder, and the beginning was more favorable towards them. So that's my number one concern, is that it's just like that beginning of the season. It's just so scary.
Yeah, and it's really hard on the players for like Grant Cano, like it's his first year starting, and like it just gets in your head, and like then he's gonna be like, if they go 0-2, 0-3, whatever, like out of the first like few games, then he's gonna be like, could be throwing it more, maybe some picks, and that's just like how you lose confidence. And for like a guy that's so talented like he is, like ranked up there with all the top quarterbacks in all of college football, like that just it's gonna be a big hurdle to get over. I mean, yeah, there's no room for error in those first few games.
So I mean, these first 4 games, I mean, we like Arizona's offense. I like Arizona offense as well. I mean, Utah's defense is okay. We were talking about it on the pre-show, actually, just how like we thought that Utah's defense was overrated last year, and I kind of agree with that. They didn't really show up and play well against a good offense. So if Arizona is actually a good offense, do you like their chances against Utah, or is it just that road game? It's just too tough for them.
I think it's that road game, and it's just like Utah, like even like last year, you called it a down year. They had 8 wins. Like they've been winning 10 games, whatever. Like they win a lot of games every year, and like they're just always competitive. And on the road to start the season with this young roster, like I would be shocked if they could win, but hopefully they can keep it close at least for first half or so.
What about USC? Because I don't think USC's defense is all that nice. So like, is there a chance that Arizona's offense can trump the USC defense? They're at home. It's only week 2, so like, the hopes aren't completely out the window yet. I mean, what do you think about that?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I just in general, a lot of these games, like I think their offense is going to keep up with a lot of these teams, because like a lot of these teams like don't have great offenses, because like ASU, young quarterback, like a lot of schools, young quarterbacks trying to break them in. So like I think, yeah, they're going to put up points. It's just going to be like the defense in the end. Like I don't think they're going to be able to stop anyone, especially early in the season, and maybe later against ASU. That's the only hope with the Arizona State game, because it's one of the last games, and maybe the defense will pick it up then and be more of a group.
Well, what I'm more so interesting about is that I think everyone's defense is going to be pretty bad. Like, I mean, with this whole pandemic going on, like having to figure out this whole scheme, Arizona might be able to get away with having a terrible defense. And if this offense can show up and put some points on the board, maybe Arizona steals a couple of games. So I think that's a pretty interesting point to note, is that like maybe everyone's going to be rusty. So if Arizona can figure it out on the offensive side of the ball, who knows? They may be walking out of here 2-2 in those first 4 games. I don't know. That's super optimistic, but I don't know. I think it's not, like it's not like a pipe dream, right? To think that this team can go 2-2, at least in my opinion. I don't know. Am I being too optimistic again, Ryan? What do you think?
Yeah, I think a little bit, but there's always room to hope, because like you said, like we don't know what teams have been doing, practicing, like they've started and stopping. Like you don't know, like if they're going to be like, even the first 2 weeks, like you don't know if they're going to be up to speed right away, because some of these teams, like it could hurt a team like USC's potential like playoff like hopes if they get off to a slow start. There's nothing you could do. Like as we talked about, there's no room for error. Like if like a team like USC, like if you go 0-2, you're out. You know, so like yeah, it's gonna be whoever's just coming out hot, firing right away.
I mean that is the other good thing about Arizona is that their expectations are a national championship or like college football playoffs or anything like that. So there's a little bit more room for error, but at the same time, you don't want another 2-5 season. You want to go 3-4 at the worst, right? I mean, 4-3 is probably where we want to be sitting at, but at least there is a little bit of room for error there. But that does help a little bit. That if you trip up in the beginning of the season and you're 1-3, maybe you can win out and save the season, or at least you can lose one of those games along the way and still consider it an okay season.
Yeah, I mean, if they could somehow pull out like around 500, I mean that would be like a win. Like that would like that would push this team's confidence to the next level, like to next season, hopefully where they have a full season, full like amount of games.
Well, I mean, although this team isn't projected to win a whole lot of games this year, that doesn't necessarily mean that there won't be any up and coming players to watch, right? So, we've already mentioned it that fall camp starts today. And, every year it seems like there's one or two guys that show out in camp and really make a name for themselves. Last year it was Christian Roland Wallace. The year before that, it was Jalen Harris. So, every year in camp, there's always that one or two guys. So what do you think about the camp this year? Do you think there's any guys that will break out? And, who's a guy to watch in camp this year?
The guy getting back to the offense that could take this offense to another level is Booby Curry. That guy is just a crazy playmaker. Like his size, 6'2", like that guy can catch jump balls, like catch balls down the field. Like that guy has huge potential, I believe. And last season, like he only had like 6 catches, barely played. Like I think with a bigger role, I mean, I think that guy could be like one of the biggest contributors on this team and offense, along with Grant Goodell, some of the running backs.
Yeah, I actually really like Booby Curry a lot. I think what kind of trumped his freshman season was, he was injured at the beginning of the year, so I think he wasn't able to get enough reps to really mold into a starting role and really get himself into the wide receiver rotation. So I don't really consider his freshman season a bust just because he got hurt, and it was unfortunate to see him get hurt because you fall behind, you don't get those reps, right? But I think a guy for me to watch is on the other side of the ball is Reagan Terry. I mean, freshman out of Florence, Arizona. I mean, I feel like this guy is going to be one of those dudes where it's like you watch the preseason camp and he's going to stick out like a sore thumb when you see him on the field, right? I mean, he's 6'4", 289 pounds. I mean, what an animal, right? Like he gained 40 pounds in the offseason. I mean, his best trait, like the hype around him as a player and as a recruit was his pass rushing ability. So, I mean, now that he's 289 pounds, you can move him to nose tackle and you could help with the run game. You can also move him to defensive end for that pass rushing ability. I mean, he's got really long arms. So, I mean, putting him at end would be quite the mismatch, I think. So, he's going to be an awesome player to watch. So, I really like Reagan Terry.
Yeah, Terry, yeah. When I like a few weeks ago, a month, whatever, when we saw like the weight changes and like all that, like all the players changes, like seeing him gain 40 pounds, like that's huge. I mean, yeah, like you said, being a mismatch on the line is just going to be huge. I mean, for this team when they don't have a lot of playmakers on that side to start.
Yeah, Arizona was like one of the worst teams in pass rushing, but I think they were like dead last, like in the entire NCAA, like Division I, Power 5, like in sacks. So like they need help on that D line. So maybe Jalen Harris and Reagan Terry can step up and make something happen on that line. I also really like Frank Brown and Jalen John as well. Frank Brown in particular, I mean, he could be one of those guys where he steps in right away and makes an impact simply just because of his versatility, right? Like he's listed as a running back, but he's also played slot receiver in high school as well. So, I mean, after the loss of Brendan Schooler, I think there's a real chance where we could see him lined up at slot receiver and catching balls out of the backfield for Arizona because J.J. Taylor was used as that guy in the passing game last year. So that's 2 voids Arizona has to fill now. And I mean, Frank Brown might kill 2 birds with one stone here. I think you can use him as a pass catching back and a slot receiver. So I think you can slot him right in. He might be an interesting player to watch, and I'll be interesting to see where they line him up in the depth chart and if he gets any reps,
Yeah, I love Frank Crown. I love him. He's
Yeah.
a very exciting player, and like you said, like I hope they use like these. They have a lot of talented young running backs. Like their offense, they have a lot of talented guys, and I hope they use a lot of these young running backs. Like you said, Jalen John. Like I hope they use these guys like as like slot receivers, just getting them the ball, pass catching. Like that's what they need. Like to push this offense forward. You need the more playmakers, the better.
Yeah, the running back situation for me could be a real game changer. Like we've talked about it before. Like we've raved about our running back core before, but like you're like 6 guys deep at that position. Like why not just rotate everybody in and out? Like it'll screw off the defenses so much. Like Jalen John is 222 pounds. Like that's a human wrecking ball right there. Like you could use him in the goal line. Nathan Tilford was great in the goal line as well. So now you've got 2 guys. You can use Gary Brightwell in the goal line as well. Like there's just so many options with that running back core. So I would love to see. That's why I'm like really excited for fall camp. I want to see kind of how the depth chart lines up and who they really start to use. And I like you said, I really do hope that Arizona takes advantage of these running backs. And in a 7-game season, why not just like throw some guys out there? It's week 5, week 6, and you're 2 and 4. Like why not give some carries to Frank Brown? Like why not, right? Like I really want them to use all those running backs. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like Nathan Tilford, as you mentioned. He's a very good young player, and I think they're just Kevin Sumlin's gonna take just like who breaks out in camp, like we're talking about, like because there's so many guys, and the reality is they're not all gonna get reps, but it's gonna be who can catch the ball, like because Gary Brightwell's gonna, I think he's gonna be like he's gonna get the majority of the carries, but so it's gonna be under him and in the pass catching game, like who can make that jump to that next level. And like a lot of these guys are young, so like behind Brightwell. So for the years coming, I mean, we have some young players to look forward to.
I want to mention one more guy. I really, this was a dude that caught my eye before, back in spring camp. Before the pandemic had shut down the spring ball activities. But I want you guys to watch out for Stacey Marshall. He's a junior tight end out of Montgomery, Alabama. I mean, the reason why he's so interesting to me is he's 6'5", 238 pounds. Like that is a super interesting build for a tight end. Like that's a mismatch no matter who you put on him, right? Like you put a linebacker on him, oh, you're 6'5", I'm going to catch this ball over you. Oh, you're going to put a slot corner on me, I'm going to catch this ball over you too. Like I like that matchup. My only concern is that Arizona hates tight ends. Like they do not use their tight ends. It's like a religion. It's like against Noel Mazzoni's religion to like use a tight end in his offense. Like I don't know what that's about. Like I remember there was that 4-star tight end that committed to Arizona, and like I was just thinking like, why would you do that to yourself? Like if you're a talented tight end, why are you coming to Arizona? We don't use tight ends here. So like I really want to see us go away from that and really use the tight ends, because I think Stacey Marshall could be an interesting, like it could be, that wild card play at that tight end position. So I don't know. I'm hopeful.
Yeah, that's how you open up the offense in football. You gotta get a big tight end and just send them with like a curl route over the middle, and yeah, like that's how you gain yards and switch it up. I mean, yeah, I think they should use tight ends. It's weird why the past few years they haven't.
They just view the tight end as an extra blocker out there, and it drives me nuts because it really does open up the offense, So we're going to leave it there. That's our show. So thank you everybody for tuning in and watching. Remember that we are live here every Friday at 4 p.m. So make sure you tune in every single week for that. And that's only half of what we do here. We also have columns as part of our collaboration with Sports Pac-12. You can go out their website at sportspac12.com, where Ryan Wall will be writing columns every single week. So you can go ahead and read those. And also make sure to visit our website as well, where we post all of our full shows and our full clips. We also like to post our highlights on social media. So you can go ahead and follow us on all of those platforms on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week.